Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my first video on the 2021 GoodReads Choice Awards. You might be asking why in March I am making a video on the GoodReads Choice Awards, since they don't really come into play until the end of the year, until like November. And I have a couple of interlinked reasons for that, I think. So far on this channel this year, I've only been talking about one award cycle, and that would be the BookTube Prize, which I am currently in the middle of judging for the first round. And I wanted to be able to talk about at least one other award on this channel, one that I'm at least somewhat involved in, and it seems like on the opposite side of the BookTube Prize, we have the GoodReads Choice Awards. With the BookTube Prize, I am methodical and an official judge, and I play by the rules. I am assigned a ballot of books, I read all of the books, and then that's how I make my decision about how I want to rank all the books. But the GoodReads Choice Awards is much more of a free-for-all. Basically, every book published in the US, I believe, in the last year is in contention, and there's no way that any of us have read all of them. And it is in fact just a big popularity contest. I really like taking part in it because I'm a fan of GoodReads overall. I mean, even though, like a lot of people, I think I mostly just use it to track my own reading and a couple of other things on the side, including for me, the GoodReads Choice Awards. And I've been voting, and I set a couple of rules for myself that, at least for the first round, if I'm going to vote in a specific genre, I want to have read at least 2 books that apply for that genre. That being said, when I get to the semifinals and the finals, I don't require myself to read the entire ballot. If one book in a genre category was something that I liked, I'll still just vote for it because it's a popularity contest. And I gotta say, one of the reasons I really like this prize is because it encourages me to read at least a little bit of front list and, you know, be part of that in with the in crowd in the immediate moment sort of thing. And maybe that's part of the reason why I am getting a head start now, is to encourage myself basically to make a TBR of books that I want to read. So anyway, I thought I'd start with books that I either have read or want to read in 3 specific and also interlinked genres, those being adult science fiction, adult fantasy, and YA SFF. Part of the reason I thought I could do this now is because usually around this time of year the BookTube SFF Awards are going on, and that's another prize I would be nominally involved in. But it had been going strong for, I think, 5 years up until last year, but it is not running this year. I believe that has to do with the fact that the organizers wanted to find a way to make the prize more inclusive, but the way that they run the prize, it's difficult to sort of curate the nominee list like that, so maybe that's part of the reason why they're not running it this year. Also, it's, from what I hear, it's a lot of work to run that prize, so after 5 years, maybe there's been a bit of burnout. But for me, that means I have lost a venue in which I talk about SFF books, and with this video, I guess I'm bringing it back. So here are the books that are in contention for me in SFF for the 2021 GoodReads Choice Awards. I'll start with science fiction, which is the year of sequels for me. Both of the books I will be mentioning, I also mentioned in my most anticipated reads of 2021 video. The first one I just listened to on audio is A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martine, which is the sequel to a memory called Empire. This is a space opera that takes place in the far future, when humans have colonized new planets and space stations. It largely takes place in a mighty empire called Tex-Kalan, which has colonized several worlds and space stations and sort of brought them into the fold of their vast cultural hegemony. But in this second book, Tex-Kalan itself faces a threat from an encroaching alien armada, and in an attempt to try to communicate with these very alien aliens, they bring in one of the barbarians from their system. The Lascelles system is populated still by humans, but since they are not part of Tex Kalan, they are seen as very much other and alien. So we follow this through various characters. The Lascelles character is Mahit Dismar, who was once an ambassador to Tex Kalan. Sure, her handler and lover, Three Seagrass, is also there to be an envoy, and they are on a ship, a flagship called the Weight of the Wheel, manned by 9 Hibiscus. And we are also following the POV of the heir to the Empire, 11-year-old 8 Antidote. Anyway, I will link to my GoodReads review for that book down below. The second science fiction adult book I want to read this year is The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is the 4th and final novel in her Wayfarer series. These novels are less closely linked. They all take place in one specific colonized galaxy, except in this case the humans and the aliens are much more integrated, and they're definitely getting along much better in this series. And in this book, in fact, which takes place, I believe, on a sort of an intergalactic truck stop, I think all of the characters aren't human, which is the first time we haven't had at least one human character in this. So I am very intrigued about that, and feel optimistic that at least we've gotten to know some of these alien species through the last 3 books. So they'll probably be relatively human, I think, in terms of their characterization. I think that's really the type of writer Chambers is, in terms of how she is viewing these new species. With some different quirks. It's when it comes to biology and gender and culture to some degree. But I guess I'll get an even clearer picture of that in this book once I get around to it. Next, I am moving on to adult fantasy, starting with a book that comes out on April 13th. It is The Light of the Midnight Stars by Rena Rosner, which is another book that was on my most anticipated reads list. This is fantasy, and it's also very much about Jewish folklore. It takes place in the Hungarian woods and features descendants of King Solomon practicing magic. And I believe we are specifically following 3 sisters who practice 3 different types of magic. And then this will juxtapose against Jewish history, I would believe, of the time. So I'm very excited for this one. When it comes to urban fantasy or fantasy that takes place in the real world, I really do like it, especially when there's some Judaism involved in all of that. The second book is much more in my wheelhouse when it comes to epic fantasy. It is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. It takes place like in a completely different world, I believe, but it is based very much on Indian mythology. And I guess I'll just read from the GoodReads description here. The Jasmine Throne is the beginning of a new trilogy set in a world inspired by the history and epics of India, in which a captive princess and a maidservant in possession of forbidden magic become unlikely allies on a dark journey to save their empire from the princess's traitor brother. Imprisoned by her dictator brother, Malini spends her days in isolation in the Harana, an ancient temple that was once the source of the powerful magical deathless waters, but is now little more than a decaying ruin. Priya is a maidservant, one among several who make the treacherous journey to the top of the Harana each night to clean Malini's chambers. She is happy to be an anonymous drudge, so long as it keeps anyone from guessing the dangerous secret she hides. But when Malini accidentally bears witness to Priya's true nature, their destinies become irrevocably tangled. One is a vengeful princess seeking to depose her brother from his throne. The other is a priestess seeking to find her family. Together, they will change the fate of an empire. So yeah, I love family drama, and I also love priestesses and gods and that sort of thing, so thinking this is going to go really well for me. I know it's also relatively anticipated by the broader fantasy community. It comes out on June 8th. It caught my attention actually because Sori had written a duology, I believe, a few years ago. Again, it's kind of based on, I think, Indian mythology. And I did not read those in time for those years as GoodReads Choice Awards. So I made sure to have a game plan for this one. Huzzah! And finally, we move on to YA SFF, or in this case, all three of these titles are YA fantasy. That's pretty standard for YA. Fantasy is a much bigger part of that subgenre, but anyway. The first book I have to talk about is A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir, which again I just listened to recently on audiobook, and again it is the fourth and final in a series, this one being her Ember in the Ashes series. So I'll link to my review down below, but in non-spoilery recap, just quick off the tongue, the story started out once again in an epic, non-earthly empire, though it is based on ancient Rome and Middle Eastern mythology. In the first book, we have a slave girl, Laya, who goes to a military academy run by her oppressors to try to save her brother from a military prison. Things spiral from there. There was also a series of games to choose a new emperor from among that class, a series of very dangerous games. It was overseen by these augurs who were mysterious magical creatures, our first taste into magic, but as the books progress, there is more and more magic that comes out, and there's a lot of magical world building, so that by book 4, the humans are not only in conflict with each other, but also with the enslaved jinn. And our three main characters each have magical storylines that they've come into that have been widely prophesized from the very beginning of the series, so that's really fun to see all of that play out. So that it becomes very much about them fighting their own demons and also remaking their own society. And yeah, it was great. It was a wonderful conclusion to the series, and I really think Tahir hit it out of the park. So these other two books have some stiff competition. The second one being Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna Ruth Meyer, another one of my anticipateds from January. Another fourth book. That seems to be a theme. Though by fourth book in this case I mean it is Meyers' fourth published book. This is, I believe, a standalone book on its own, which takes place in a YA epic fantasy series that is inspired by tree sirens and war between those sirens and humans, and we have a bit of a cross romance between the daughter of a siren queen, I believe, and then a human boy astronomer named Owen. Yeah, I really like Meyers' writing, the way that she lays out her fantastical world building. I've been following her career ever since before she had a career, and she was writing in a NaNoWriMo Vidler community with me. And it's been a really fun ride so far, so expecting the same with this. And finally, this is the most tenuous possibility for me right now, but I have We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faisal, which is the second in her Sands of Araya series, hoping I didn't bludgeon that one too much. I am currently waiting for the audio of the first book to get to me. The first book came out a couple of years ago, We Hunt the Flame. It sounded really interesting to me, but I did not get to it in time to vote for it in its GCA year. But now I'm excited because I'm hoping if I like it, I will be able to continue on with the series. But anyway, to summarize, I guess, the first book, so I don't spoil you or myself, I'll say that I believe this is also based on Middle Eastern mythology, and it takes place in a separate epic fantasy world with, you know, a kingdom and various people sort of on the run. We have Zafira the Hunter, who has disguised herself as a man. There is Nasir, the Prince of Death, who assassinates people who defy his autocratic father. So, you know, similar tropes kind of coming up. With war brewing in the background and people having to band together, you know, this could, as always, be really good and really fun if it's done correctly. So I am hoping for the best. So that about covers it for me. I will leave links to all of these books, be they my own reviews or just their Goodreads pages, down below. I'll also just leave more links for the Goodreads Choice Awards if you want to, check out past winners or all of that good stuff. I should be back on this channel in a few days with my March book haul to talk about even more books that have caught my fancy, and hopefully I will get to reading soon. We will see. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.